Ladies and gentlemen, the PPYC players welcome you to Old Time Radio. Our first program is from the Goodman and Jane Ace comedy series Easy Aces, which aired from 1931 until 1945 and from 1948 until 1949. Our story of Jane's mink coat takes you on an incredible journey into the lives of several unconnected people who become connected in a convoluted story of, believe it or not, a mink coat. There comes a time in every woman's life, it seems, when she feels she simply cannot go another day unless she gets a new mink coat. That time has come to Jane Ace, whom we find now in the living room of the Aces bungalow, trying to find a way to slip this delicate matter past the master of the household. It's after dinner. The master of the household is sitting in his favorite easy chair, reading the evening paper as Jane is going over her shopping list for the next day.
Now, dear, let me see if I got everything down I want to buy tomorrow. Toothbrush, soap, cleansing cream, mink coat, and lipstick. Anything you need, dear?
Yes, it has been.
Dear, you're not listening. Put that newspaper down. Look at my shopping list. See if you want to add anything.
Oh, let's see. Toothbrush, soap, cleansing cream, mink coat, and lipstick. No, I don't need anything. Unless you want to return those ginger ale bottles. We get a nickel back on each bottle, and every little bit will help. Mink coat? What is this thing here?
Where? Oh, yes. Mink coat. I meant to talk to you about that. Make a lap.
What?
Make a lap. I want to sit down.
Okay, I made a lap, but you're not gonna.
Now, dear, isn't this cozy? Oh, look, dear, your lap's getting a front porch here.
Yes, and if you look around back, you'll find a veranda. Now, Jane, about this coat.
Dear, I saw it again today. It's a dream. You know that first shop around the corner?
Just to say hello to.
Well, I've been passing it every day, and there's this dreamy mink coat in the window. The girl wearing it looks so smart. Of course, she's just a dummy. And so could I.
How much?
It's full length, and it'll cover all my dresses.
How much?
It's the softest mink. It's wild.
Yeah, what isn't? How much?
That's just it. You haven't heard the half of it.
How much, Jane?
$1,750.
Well, that sounds pretty reasonable for a good mink coat.
Now you've heard the half of it. Altogether, it's $3,500.
What?
Now, dear, take it easy, dear. Relapse. Remember your blood pressure.
Look, Jane, let's be reasonable. Where am I going to get that kind of money?
I knew you were going to say that. I knew it. I knew it.
Yeah, but Jane, you know we can't afford to spend all that money.
Everybody gets some pleasure out of our money but me. How about your sister's oldest boy when he had his tonsils out? And your brother's youngest girl when she had her adenoids out? You pay for all that. Everybody has a wonderful time on our money but me.
What wonderful times?
Oh, and what about your mother's teeth? Now, who paid for that?
Leave my mother's teeth out of this.
Oh, and I mentioned your mother's teeth, they hurt? Well, I suppose you'll be happy if I don't get a fur coat and get pneumonia and have to spend the winter in an oxidal tent.
That's a sparkling notion, Jane. Look, tell you what I'm going to do.
Oh, I knew you would, dear.
Now, wait a minute now. Listen to this. I've got a big new advertising account coming up. Pretty good chance of getting it too. The Crown Paint Company. And if I get it, I make a nice commission out of the, and you can have the mink coat.
Oh, thanks, dear.
No, wait. I said if I get the account. I have a 50% chance of getting it.
Oh, that's only the half of it, dear. You'll get it. You'll get it by hook or ladder. And if I'm wrong, I'm not far from it.
When Ace told Jane there was a 50% chance of getting the account, he wasn't kidding. The other 50% depended on how good business got at Crown Paint Company. In fact, there was a certain color the paint company hoped to be out of, the red, if I'm not being too subversive. Well, shall we continue? After Ace left the office the next morning, Jane got busy on the telephone. Good morning, Davis Furs.
Hello, this is Mrs. Jane Ace. Mr. Davis, remember that mink coat I've been looking at?
I certainly do. A lot of women have been looking at it.
Yes, it certainly is. Well, could you hold that coat for me?
You mean you're buying it?
Well, practically.
What do you mean, practically?
Well, I talked about it with my husband last night, and he said it's 60% certain I can buy it.
Well, good for you, Mrs. Ace. That is, if he'll really let you buy it.
Well, I'm sure he will, because if he didn't want me to buy it, he would have come right out flat-headed and said so. Doesn't it to you?
Tell you what, I don't usually hold coats without at least a deposit, but I have a certain reason for doing it for you. Because if you'll buy this coat, it'll come in mighty handy. My wife will be thrilled to hear about this. In fact, I'm going to call her and tell her.
Hello?
Hello, Mrs. Davis. This is the man named Davis who claims to be married to you.
Oh, hello, John, you silly thing.
Oh, silly am I, not too silly to buy you that home out in the suburbs you've been wanting so bad. Well, now who's silly?
Oh, John, you don't mean it. Are we really finally going to buy that home?
Well, it's practically ours.
What do you mean practically?
Well, it's 70% ours, honey.
70%?
Well, Mrs. Ace just called me and said her husband told her he was 70% certain she could have that mink coat she's been looking at in the past few weeks.
But that's not definite, John.
But Mary, if he didn't want her to have it, wouldn't he have come out flat-headed and said she couldn't have?
What?
Well, doesn't it to you?
John, you're excited.
I certainly am. We've been dreaming about that house for some time now. You get on the phone and call the real estate company right now.
Oh, John, you're a darling. In fact, Mrs. Herman from the real estate office called me just a little while ago about the house. I told her to give us another day or two to think about it, and she was so understanding. Will she ever be surprised to hear from me now?
Herman Real Estate, Mrs. Herman speaking.
Hello, Mrs. Herman. This is Mrs. Davis again.
Oh, hello, Mrs. Davis. Have you some good news for me?
The good news is we're going to buy that house.
Oh, I'm thrilled for you. Your husband changed his mind rather suddenly, didn't he?
He certainly did. but the house is practically ours now.
What do you mean practically?
Well, John came out flat-headed and said it was 80% certain we'd buy it.
80%? But that's not 100, Mrs. Davis.
Well, if he didn't want me to buy it, wouldn't he have come out flat-headed and said so?
You're a little excited, aren't you, Mrs. Davis?
Well, doesn't it to you?
Well, yes, I must admit it does, or did, or what was the question?
I said it's as certain as anything could be. And Mrs. Herman, I want to remind you that you promised to fix it up in good shape. It certainly needs a lot of renovating. I'll be out this afternoon and sign the papers and give you a deposit.
Oh, good. And don't worry about renovating. It's going to be painted thoroughly. As a matter of fact, that's the last house we have in that subdivision out there. And now that you're going to buy it, I'm going to order a paint job for every house in the section. In fact, I feel safe enough now calling the paint people and putting in that order.
Crown Paint Company, good morning.
This is Mrs. Herman. May I speak to Mr. Crown? He knows what it's about.
Just a moment, please.
Crown speaking.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Crown. This is Mrs. Herman, out on the island.
Oh, yes, Mrs. Herman. What's the good word this morning?
The good word is that I'm going to put through that paint order.
Well, you finally got rid of that last house out there, huh?
Well, it's about 90% certain.
90%?
Well, I mean, the woman's husband didn't come out flat-headed and say no.
You're a little worked up, aren't you?
I certainly am. Now I'm giving you this order in plenty of time. I ought to get delivery of the paint pretty quick, doesn't it to you?
It certainly does. I mean, yes, it will, or something. And that reminds me, I'm glad you called. I've been waiting to hear from you on this order before I did something myself. I got to make a call. Thanks for the order, Mrs. Herman.
Yes, this is Mr. Ace.
This is Mr. Crown of the Crown Paint Company.
Oh, yes, Mr. Crown. What's new?
Well, it looks like we're going to do some advertising business.
Really? Well, gee, that's swell. I was just sitting here working out an idea for you.
Good. It's 99% certain. I can tell you now the reason I've been hesitating. We've been waiting on a pretty big paint order, and it looks like now we're going to get it. As I said, it's 99% certain. Wait for my call about 3 or 4 o'clock this afternoon, and I'll give you the definite okay.
Well, I think we can push that 1% over by 3 or 4 o'clock.
That's the way I feel. If the woman I was waiting for to come across with the order wasn't going to buy the paint, she'd have come out flat-headed and said so. Doesn't it to you?
Oh, sure, Mr. Crown. What did you say?
Tell you what we want to do, Mr. Ace. I'd like to have you concentrate on one particular quality of our paint. It's a one-coat paint.
One coat? Well, that's funny.
What?
Nothing. I was just thinking of that one coat. That kind of reminds me of something I was talking to Mrs. Ace about last night. Well, I'll be working on an idea, Mr. Crown. I got to make a call right now.
Hello? Hello?
Well, hello, Jane. Guess what?
You mean guess who? Don't you, dear?
No, I mean, guess what happened? I got a call from the paint company, and the deal is 99.75% certain.
Ah, that's a shame. I want a full-length coat, not 3/4.
Isn't that awful? It looks like I'm going to get their advertising. The guy didn't turn me down, Jane. he didn't come right out flat-footed and say no.
Oh, that's wonderful. You mean I can have that coat? And
You certainly can. I promise you. You'd better wait until 3 or 4 o'clock. I expect a call from Mr. Crown definitely okaying the deal by that time.
3 or 4 o'clock. Okay, dear. I'll be waiting on pins and cushions.
Well, 3 o'clock came, 4 o'clock came, his shadow came, and still no call from the Crown Paint Company. How could he know the person he needed to hear from was waiting to hear from somebody else, who was waiting to hear from somebody else, who was waiting to hear from Jane, who was waiting to hear from him? He decided to take a chance. He called the Crown Paint Company.
Good afternoon, Crown Paint Company.
This is Mr. Ace. May I speak to Mr. Crown, please?
Just a moment, please, Mr. Ace.
Crown speaking.
This is Mr. Ace. I didn't get your call, so I thought I'd take a chance. You said it was 99% certain.
Well, it was. But I've been waiting to hear from a certain party, and I haven't heard from her. I think I'll give her a ring right now, Mr. Ace, and find out what's going on. Is that you, Mrs. Herman? What happened to the paint order?
Well, I've been waiting to hear from that woman who was going to buy that last house. She told me it was 90% certain, but I think I'll give her a ring and see what's going on.
Yes, this is Mrs. Davis.
Oh, Mrs. Davis, this is Mrs. Herman. How about that house? Weren't you coming over to sign the papers and make a deposit?
Well, I was, Mrs. Herman. I was 80% certain I was. But I've been waiting to hear from my husband. I haven't heard from him all day. I'll tell you what, Mrs. Herman, I'm going to give him a ring, and I'll be back to you very soon.
But honey, I expected to hear from Mrs. Ace, and she hasn't called me. She told me it was 70% certain.
Well, Mrs. Herman has been calling me like mad, Sean.
I'll call up Mrs. Ace and find out what's going on. See you later, honey.
But Mr. Davis, I've been waiting on pins and cushions all afternoon to hear from my husband. He said it was 60% certain.
Well, why hasn't he called?
Well, he hasn't called me up. I've been sitting at this phone till I'm black and blue, and I even took 4 showers.
4 showers?
The phone always rings when I'm in the shower.
And he hasn't called you?
No, he hasn't.
Mrs. Ace, you're not kidding me, are you? Are you sure your husband didn't say no? Come clean now.
Come clean? Mr. Davis, I told you about the 4 showers. I'm going to call up Mr. Ace and see what's going on or not.
No, Jane, I haven't heard from him. If I had, I'd have called you. I found him and told him to let me know when he hasn't called. Looks like the coat's off.
But, dear, what do I tell Mr. Davis to do with the coat?
No comment.
Are you lost yet? Well, don't get discouraged. It gets even more complicated now. Another character has crept into the melee. Their next-door neighbor, Blanche Roberts, Jane's best friend. They tell each other everything. This is their latest exchange.
So you see, Blanche, I'm really in a quarry.
Well, Jane, I don't like to interfere in anything as personal as trying to make your husband buy you a mink coat.
Yes, Blanche, but go ahead. But what?
But what do you mean? But what?
I don't know. But there's usually a but at the end of I don't like to interfere. Say it, Blanche. But what?
Oh, nothing. I just don't like to interfere.
Oh, I thought there was going to be a but.
No, but that reminds me, Jane.
Yes, I thought so. You don't like to interfere, but what?
I think if your husband didn't say no exactly, you should have the mink coat. What you ought to do is order it, and then it'll be too late.
You mean I ought to get the coat without waiting for him to say if I should?
Well, he didn't say no, Jane.
Well, no, but he didn't say yes.
But he said it was 60% certain. You told me.
Yes, but that leaves about, let me see, 60 from 100, odd from
Look, Jane, if you ordered the coat and you had your initials put in the satin lining, it'll be too late for him to change his mind.
Oh, I couldn't do that, Blanche.
I would if I were you.
Well, if you're going to talk me into it, Blanche, I will.
Now, wait a moment. Don't blame me for this. All I said was, if you had your initials put in the lining.
Well, get thee behind me, satin, Blanche. I'm going to do it. You're a godsend. Hello? Is that you, Mr. Davis?
That's right.
Well, Mrs. Ace, this is Mr. Davis.
What did you say?
Davis. D-A-V, I mean A-C-E, Davis. Jane Davis. Jane Ace. Oh, now I've got it.
Oh, yes, Mrs. Ace. Am I glad to hear from you?
Just fine. It's about those initials, Mr. Davis. I'll take the coat.
Initials?
J-A in the lining. Will you put the initials in?
Then your husband said it was all right?
We'll cross him when we come to it. I'll be down for a fitting and we'll talk it all over.
Gee, that's swell, Mrs. Ace. I'm sure glad you called. I appreciate it. My wife appreciates it. In fact, I'll phone her right now.
John, dear, is it really true?
It sure is, honey.
I'll call Mrs. Herman right away.
Well, Mrs. Davis, I'm very happy for you.
Isn't it wonderful, Mrs. Herman?
And don't you worry about that paint job. I'll attend to that right away.
Yes, ma'am, Mrs. Herman. This is Mr. Crown.
That order for the paint? Well, it's official now.
Well, thank you. Good. I'll take care of it right away.
Yes, Mr. Crown. This is Mr. Ace. I was wondering.
Sorry to have held you up this way, but I just this minute got a confirmation on that advertising.
Oh, wonderful, Mr. Crown. So when can I see you?
Well, suppose I drop down by your office first thing in the morning.
Fine. I'll have some layouts for you. I've got several good ideas for some billboard advertising.
Great. Don't forget that one coat paint.
Oh, yes, that one coat. I mustn't forget that one coat, especially.
After getting good news about the advertising campaign for the Crown Paint Company, Mr. Ace got right to work putting some ideas on paper. He's working at his desk in the office when who should come in but...
Hello, dear.
Why, hello, Jane. I was just going to call you.
Just fine.
So sit down. What's the matter? You look a little beat.
You mean this hangnail expression?
Yes, this hang... Yeah.
Dear, I've done the most terrible thing I've ever did in all the years we've been married and 10 months.
So what did you...
But first, I want to tell you how terrible I feel about it, and I'm going to cancel it.
What did you do? What?
And I also want you to know I didn't do it on my own violation. I was talked into it by somebody I should have known better.
So what did you do? You know what?
You know me. When I get the urge to do something, I become completely uninhibited.
So what did you what?
But I realize now I could never wear it with a clear conscience, no matter how cold it gets.
So what did you do? Can't wear what? You don't mean you ordered that mink coat without even waiting to find out if my deal went through?
In other words, yes.
Well, what other words?
Oh, but don't worry, dear. I'm going to call and cancel it. Of course, I may have to pay for the initial cost.
The initial cost?
I told him to put my monocle in the lining.
Your monocle?
But I'm going to cancel the whole thing, and no sooner done the better. Now, give me that phone.
No, wait a minute, Jane. Just wait. Put that down. You don't have to cancel it. I just put over the deal I was telling you about. So now you can get that mink coat, and you can wear it with a clear conscience, no matter how cold it gets.
No, dear. That's very sweet, but it's too late. I already did the damage, and this is going to be a lesson to me. You have to take the bitter with the better, I always say. And until things get better, I'll be satisfied with the bitter. Now, don't you think I'd better?
Jane, look. The deal is made. You can get the coat.
No, dear, not by a bond site. Now, a person mustn't run around half-cocked buying mink coats.
Well, who's half-cocked?
Well, I'm going to teach me a lesson if it's the last thing I do.
Well, if you insist on canceling the coat, okay, I'm not going to argue with you.
I'm sorry. It has to be this way. I'm calling now. Let me think. PL 3634. Maybe after this, I'll remember to at least ask my husband about it. My own flesh and bones. If I keep doing things like this, I'm kissing my happy home. Oh, hello?
This is Mr. Davis. Who's this?
Oh, hello, Mr. Davis. This is Jane Ace. You know that mink coat I was looking at?
Yes?
Well, I'm not looking at it anymore. Cancel it.
Oh, this is terrible. Goodbye, Mrs. Ace. I've got to call my wife.
Oh no, You can't do that, John.
I'm sorry, Mary, but that woman just canceled the mink coat. Just now, it's off. Call Mrs. Herman at the real estate office and call off the house.
But Mrs. Davis, you can't call it off now. I thought I had the house sold to you.
And I thought my husband had a mink coat sold, but the customer just canceled it.
And now you're canceling the house? Oh, goodness. I've got some canceling to do myself.
What's that? What do you mean you don't want the paint?
I'm sorry, but that's the way it is.
But you told me you had that house sold out there to this Mrs. Davis.
I thought I had it sold to her, just like Mrs. Davis thought Mr. Davis had sold a mink coat to another woman who just called up and canceled the coat.
You mean the whole thing depended on somebody's mink coat?
That's right. That's why I'm canceling the paint job.
Oh, which reminds me, I got some canceling to do myself. Goodbye.
But Mr. Crown, what happened?
What is it, dear?
You heard me. The advertising campaign is called off.
But why? I should get a reason. What am I going to say around the office here? Was it anything I said?
What is it, dear?
No, nothing like that. It's all because, oh, you wouldn't believe me, Mr. Ace. It's too fantastic.
What is it, dear?
Jane, will you leave me alone? Go home.
What did you say?
No, I was just talking to Mr. Crown. So what is this fantastic reason that you mentioned?
Okay, I'll tell you. Mink coat.
A what?
You see? I told you you wouldn't believe it.
Oh, yes, I will. I just didn't understand you. It sounded like you said mink coat. I must have it on my mind. So what did you say?
Mink coat.
Oh, so you did say mink coat.
I did. Mink coat. Mink coat, mink coat. There. I said it again.
So what about a mink coat? What's that got to do with our advertising campaign for your paint company?
Okay, you asked for it. Some lunkhead promised his wife a mink coat. Then he backed out. The woman's husband who sells mink coats had his wife cancel a house they were going to buy. And the realtor who was going to sell the house called me up and canceled a big paint order. And now I'm canceling the advertisement campaign.
You mean it all depended on some...
Silly, isn't it?
But Mr. Crown, after all, if you won an advertising campaign...
Look, there's no use taking off with me. It all goes back to Mr. Davis now. If Mr. Davis' first shop sells the mink coat, then we can talk business. Hello? Hello?
Excuse me, I dropped the phone. Just hold the phone a minute, Mr. Crown. Jane?
Honestly, dear, the way you talk on the phone, no one can understand what's going on. Can't you use words of more than one cylinder? Dear, what's the matter? You're as pale as a goat.
Jane! Oh, Jane, did I hear you call a Mr. Davis just now to cancel that mink coat?
Yes, it's the fur shop around the corner I was telling you about.
Oh, isn't that awful? Jane, you almost ruined a whole big advertising campaign for me.
Me? For you? Me? For you?
Yeah, and me for you and tea for two.
Oh, how did I do anything to your old advertising campaign? I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, I know, and still you almost ruined it. It's a gift, Jane. It's gonna be okay on that mink coat paint. I mean that one coat paint. I mean the mink coat.
Well, thanks, dear, but I won't take the coat.
No, you will take the coat.
I won't.
Yes, you will. Jane, I insist you buy that mink coat.
Well, this is an argument I never would have believed with my own ears.
You're gonna buy that coat right now. Understand? Still there, Mr. Crown? Well, good. Mr. Crown, it's gonna be okay. That lunkhead you mentioned, well, he just bought that mink coat for his wife.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you have enjoyed the show as much as we have enjoyed performing it. Our cast of characters: Jane Ace, played by Lori B., Mr. Ace by Dave I., Mr. Davis, played by Jeff H., Mary Davis by Joan F., Mrs. Herman was played by Kathy B., the secretary for the Crown Paint Company by Vanessa J., Mr. Crown was Tom F., and Blanche Roberts was Anna Marie K. Your announcer is Jeff H. Sound by Luke H. Directed and produced by Tina H. Stay tuned for more old-time radio. Until next time, this is the PPYC Players signing off.